What's happening today, Guardians? Hey, listen, I wanted to go ahead and continue this series on the most recent patch, dude. There's been a lot of different stuff that I put out over the course of a week that really touched on all the different weapons that were nerfed or even buffed, and I wanted to go over one particular weapon today, which is Thorn. It's an exotic hand cannon that many competitive players use here in Destiny, one of which I loaded myself out in a mini sweaty match and all kinds of 3v3s and even in Rumble. Fellas, before we get started, if we can go for another 1,000 likes, man, helps my channel a ton, keeps everything floating, and like I've said before in the past, fellas, I want to roll right into Rise of Iron and keep going to this. I want this channel to be one of your go-to channels in the future, and so if you can hit that like button, man, it helps me tremendously. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. Alright guys, I want to briefly just show you this. This might be like common sense, but Aztecross Ballistics, what you want to go on. Now, I know some people have mentioned aggressive ballistics in the past. There's really no need to, man. There's only a 2 armor difference there between what you can take somebody out with 1 crit 2 body shots. And so I would highly suggest staying on Aztecross Ballistics, especially with the most recent nerf to range. Final round, of course, and send it. That's just, I mean, again, guys, this is all just common sense, but you really want to leave it on send it with the nerf to range, man. Send it is becoming, you know, a lot of people before was like, well, I'll throw it on perfect balance because it already had pretty decent range to begin with. Here now, since this has happened, you really need to be rocking it out on send it. And then, of course, Mark of the Devourer, which, of course, will be eating your opponents down with that poison, that damage over time. So Bungie's justification for nerfing this weapon was that they didn't want a lot of people coming into it, kind of like what was done in year 1, and everyone was using Thorn over and over again. I didn't think that it's going to be an issue simply because I already see so many players even now not use Thorn. Thorn is still here. A lot of players even have Thorn in their vault and they don't use it simply because they don't like the recoil of Thorn. A lot of people find that Thorn is one of the most difficult weapons to master, to learn, to get that recoil down. And I've got to say, man, out of all the weapons I've ever messed with, Thorn is probably one of the most difficult I've ever messed with, especially if you're rocking it out on send it regularly. Now, let's talk a little bit more about its gameplay this past week. Look, I've been messing around with it. I've been playing around with it. Still using it in 3s because I think 3s is where it shines more than anything. The ability to be able to team shot with this weapon is key, man. It is such a just a great weapon for team shot. So I'm still using it in 3s. Now, here's the thing about it. Even though 25%, when you really look at it on the number side of things, guys, it essentially dropped from 38 range to 32. Okay, so if you think about it, guys, when you look at it from that standpoint, you're pretty much looking at it used to be like an IS Luna, and now it's pretty much got the same range as what a Hawk Moon would have. This is not counting like Hammer Forge on your Hawk Moon. You see where I'm coming from? Base default stats. So that's pretty much what it's been lowered down to. Now I want to ask you something. I want you to think about it. When was the last time Hawk Moon has had a phantom bullet for you? Huh? You know what I'm saying? When was the last time you've missed a few shots with Hawk Moon? That's right. There's a reason why I did a weapon dive on Hawk Moon, because I know how much hell it gives players because it has so many phantom bullets. So just like Hawk Moon, guys, I want you to go ahead and get in your head the harsh reality, especially if you're a Thorn user. Man, I definitely use Thorn in just about every 3s activity that I could possibly do. And what I had to realize real quickly, definitely got limitations when it comes to its mid-range capabilities. Thorn is almost not necessarily as unreliable as what Hawk Moon is. And it's just been thrown kind of close to it though. It definitely, whereas before I would look at Thorn more along the lines of the same consistency of what like an IS Luna would be. Now I look at it more of a consistency of a little bit better than what I get out of my Hawk Moon. It's what I'm trying to come here, man. And when you get to that point, you really have to start deciding, well, what's the point of me using this weapon? It's forcing my hand on that kind of stuff because every time I get tied up into a mid-range fight, I can see that it's no longer able to reliably get those kills from me. And that's what it all comes down to, especially when it comes to hand cannons. It comes down to just consistency and reliability. And I can tell you that was the main thing that anyone ever used Thorn. It wasn't because of OP. It wasn't because the damage over time was just oh so wonderful. It was the fact that it was, out of all the hand cannons, one of the most consistent hand cannons. Well, guys, that is your weapon review for Thorn. And I can tell you guys, if you learn the limitations of this weapon, if you definitely get that down, you'll be just fine. It's just like Hawkmoon. You know, for a while there, I was using Hawkmoon a bunch, and the thing that made me really good with Hawkmoon was not necessarily just getting my gun skill down with that weapon, was knowing exactly what the limitations were and knowing like the cutoff point in which to engage an enemy. Once they reached or got right outside of my optimal range, man, I knew exactly when to say, okay, right now is not a time for fight, it's a time for flight. I'll revisit this. Let me get behind an obstruction of some sort, and I'm gonna pull them and bait them in close to me. And this is kind of like the same concept here with Thorn, guys. Anyways, fellas, thanks so much for coming and watching. I'll catch y'all later. Slap that like button like your mama told you right.